In the 17th century, England was a feudal country. The number of large landowners increased. The landowners would enclose the lands, which resulted in the reduction of the number of small landowners. The large landowners exploited the peasants, who were left without land. The number of poor people increased. Some peasants moved to cities and became artisans. The urban bourgeoisie was also forming. The wealth of the merchants in the southern and eastern regions of the country increased significantly. In the north of the country, there were still feudal lords and nobility. The country's king was an absolute monarch. The landowners and the nobility supported the king. The king also relied on the Anglican Church and the nobility. The English king, James I, started a policy of persecution against the Puritans. This caused a conflict between the king and Parliament. In the south of England, a significant portion of the population was composed of Puritans. The Puritans opposed the Anglican Church. In the north and west of the country, the majority of the population adhered to the Anglican Church and supported the king. The Scottish nobility joined the opposition to the king. In 1640, a revolution broke out in England. The main reason for the revolution was the king's attempt to rule the country without parliament. In 1640, the Long Parliament was convened. The bourgeoisie and the new nobility united against the king. The Long Parliament abolished the royal courts. The reforms carried out by the bourgeoisie and the new nobility were supported by the majority in the House of Commons. The House of Lords was opposed to these reforms. The English Civil War began. The bourgeoisie and the new nobility created a well-armed and disciplined army. The command of this army was entrusted to Oliver Cromwell. In 1645, the king's army was defeated at the Battle of Naseby. After this defeat, the king fled to Scotland. In 1647, the Scottish nobility handed over the king to the English Parliament. In 1649, King Charles I was executed, and the monarchy was abolished. England was declared a republic. Power was given to Parliament. The Civil War ended in June 1646. With the defeat of the king's army, the power came into the hands of the new nobility and the bourgeoisie. Parliament put the lands of the king and his supporters up for sale. Church lands were also confiscated. However, dependence on large landowners in the countryside was not abolished. Parliament did not want the creation of a republic and the abolition of the monarchy. The People's Committees were trying to develop a struggle to expand the right to vote and participate in elections. In 1646, the Levellers, led by John Lilburne, began to speak out. They demanded the adoption of democratic laws, that each citizen has equal rights, the abolition of the power of the House of Lords, the creation of a parliament that is accountable to the people, the imposition of taxes in favour of the poor peasantry. Parliament, in order to avoid the popular uprising, reconciled with the king's supporters. In the spring of 1648, the Pride's Purge was carried out to drive the king's supporters out of Parliament. Colonel Pride did not allow the king's supporters into Parliament. On January 30th to 31st, 1649, King Charles I was executed by decision of the High Court. On May 19, 1649, England was declared a republic. The internal contradictions within the republic weakened its military power. In early 1649, uprisings began in London led by Winstanley and others. Those who called themselves true levellers demanded not only political equality, but also economic equality. They also demanded the right to use communal lands. The colonial wars began to lift the revolutionary morale of Cromwell's army. In 1649, Ireland, known as the Green Island, was conquered. Scotland was captured in 1652. In 1653, the internal counter-revolution that overthrew the Republic and the Revolution began. Cromwell declared himself Lord Protector and established a military dictatorship in the country. 1653 to 1658. After the death of Cromwell in 1654, the so-called sealed knot period began. The new nobility and the bourgeoisie took over the country's trade and economy. In 1660, the monarchy was restored. and the bourgeoisie and the new nobility restored the power of the Stuart dynasty. King Charles II and then King James II tried to restore Catholicism. All this led to a state revolution in 1688. The Stuarts' attempt to restore absolute power was unsuccessful. After the overthrow of James II, William of Orange was invited to the throne. This revolution ended with the adoption of the Bill of Rights in 1689. According to this law, a limited monarchy regime was established. The king was deprived of the right to interfere in the army and the courts. Parliament gained control over the army and the courts. The king was prohibited from annulling laws passed by Parliament, imposing taxes, and raising armies. The English bourgeois revolution ended absolutism and feudal norms. It created conditions for the development of capitalism in the country, led to the emergence of a legal state, and the beginnings of civil society appeared.